Hey there, and welcome to your very first Flute Q&A with me, Jane Kavanagh. I'm a flute teacher. My business, The Flute School, or Jane Kavanagh Flute School, is to teach people just like you how to get faster progress on the flute through learning proper technique. It's the best way to learn. It's the fastest way to learn. So these Q&As are going to be a little bit different to the weekly mini lessons that you get. Firstly, the weekly mini lessons, I edit out all my word smushes that I make, or most of them anyway. This Q&A, I'm going to answer all of your questions that you've emailed in, but I'm not going to stop recording. I'm not going to edit. I'm not going to edit out my stumbles over my words. So you're just going to have to deal with that. So it's a little bit more casual. These are going to be happening every month. You can email a question in, and the reason for this new format is two reasons. I get emails from people all the time asking questions, and I love answering them, or my assistant Rachel answers. But it's so much better for your learning if you can see a demonstration as well with my flute. So it's for you that I'm doing these Q&As. And the second reason is students in my Flute Academy sometimes have questions about the lessons and the exercises that they're doing through the 45-day program. And this is a great opportunity for those questions to be answered and have everyone else hear them as well. When people ask a question, it's so much better for me to say it in a situation like this where everyone can see the answer. It's like a masterclass. If you've ever done or heard of a flute masterclass, it's where someone is on stage or up the front of the room having a lesson with a good teacher, but there's an audience. So this is a little bit like a masterclass where you get to benefit from other people's questions, because often you either have the same question or you have a bit of a light bulb moment when you hear someone else ask the question and you didn't even realize you had that question, but it's relevant to you. Okay, so I'm going to try and get through all of the questions today. Let me just double check that I'm recording. Yes, I am. Okay, that always makes me nervous. All right, so here we go. Like I said, you're going to need to put up with me looking at my notes that I've made here. Or not put up with me, but just come with me through all the silences that I normally edit out. Okay, so the first question we've got is from Bronwyn. She's in the Flute Academy. So, that's the other thing. I'm going to prioritize the Flute Academy students' questions and answer those first in this Q&A. The reason for that is these students are in a program where they're step-by-step working through like daily exercises to improve their flute playing. So they're really in tune with what they're trying to learn and the exercises that they're doing. So their questions are really often, I was going to say well thought out. Not that they're not well thought out if you're not in the academy, but they're like in the depths of learning something specific. And those questions can be so beneficial to everyone because they're often asking about a specific technique. There you go. That's what I was trying to say. So the first question is from Bronwyn. Hi, Bronwyn. Her question is, Jane, do you pull the flute head joint out every time you practice or only in the warmer months? This is such a great question because it shows that Bronwyn understands that pulling the flute head joint out, see how mine is pulled out half an inch, or I don't really work in inches, a third of an inch. It shows that she understands that when you pull that out, pull the head joint out, it makes the flute flatter. So as a little demonstration, if you're not sure what a head joint being pulled out or pushed in does, I'm going to push my head joint all the way in. So that's all the way in. This is going to be sharper because the flute is shorter and higher. Imagine like a short or small bottle. So compare that to if I pull this out really far, you'd never have it out this far. That was the same note. That was an A, both times. So her question is, do you pull it out in warmer months or all the time? Warmer months, or warmer weather, I should say, make your flute naturally sharper. So that's why we need to pull it out more when it's warm. In winter, you tend to push it in more because it's cold. Actually, I shouldn't say in winter. If it's the middle of summer and you're in a cold room, I should say cold room temperature and warm room temperature. So cold room temperature, you tend to have it pushed in more. so that you're not as flat. And warm room temperatures, you tend to have it pulled out so that you're not as sharp. So the answer to your question, Bronwyn, so this is a bit long-winded. gotta get more succinct at being succinct with my answers. Oh my gosh, losing my train of thought. Okay, so this is why I love editing, because I can edit out all these like brain failures. You're gonna see my brain failures at real time. Bronwyn, you always have your flute pulled out a little bit. And that the reason is the flute is designed to be in tune when it's pulled out a little bit. That little bit depends on the temperature. If you have your flute pushed in all the way, all the time, you will be sharp because the flute is not designed to be in tune all the way in. So there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Start with a pulled out a little bit and then vary it depending on who else you're playing with and their tuning and the temperature of the room that you're playing in. Okay, on to the next question. Kath asks, she's also in the Flute Academy, how do you play dynamics on the flute? Does it just depend on your airspeed? And can you show us some examples from real pieces? Yes, I certainly can, Kath. That is such a good question. It's quite an advanced question. Now, you said, does it just depend on your airspeed? Actually, no. So dynamics, whether you play loud or soft, your airspeed, your air coming out of your mouth shouldn't change speed. That's not to say that for loud notes, you don't play harder. You do play harder, but your mouth opens up for louder notes. And for softer notes, your mouth, the hole in your mouth, is smaller. And you're blowing more soft, and you're using less air. So you're using less air for piano, soft, and you're using more air for forte, which is loud. But the actual airspeed doesn't change. The reason for that is if your airspeed was to change, it would affect your intonation. So here's an example. I'm going to play, I'll play an A, that A, and I'm going to slow down the airspeed. This is, you don't want this to happen, and you're going to hear that it gets flatter as that happens. So, equally, I'm going to start from that slow airspeed and speed up the airspeed, and you'll hear it gets sharper. So this is not how you do dynamics, and this is not how you control your tuning either. So slow and flat. So that's what happens when this airspeed speeds up. You get sharper. Now, you want to keep that airspeed the same, because if you keep that airspeed constant, it keeps your tuning more constant. It keeps your intonation constant. So the tuning of the note constant. Now, when you asked this question, it gave me a great idea. I think I'm going to eventually create a bonus course for Inside the Flute Academy called How to Play the Flute in Tune, or How to Control Your Tuning on the Flute. It's going to be a series of lessons, but it's just an excellent idea, Kath. So thank you for that idea. So no, it's not your airspeed. And what else have I written here? Okay, so when you play loud on the flute, I said your embouchure hole opens up. Also, the inside of your mouth opens up. So if I play an A, and that's forte, the whole inside of my mouth is opened up. If I play that softly, the embouchure hole gets smaller, but the inside of my mouth gets smaller as well. That's part of the way of controlling the speed of the air so that you can play softly without going flat. So it's a complex, it's a complex scenario because there's a few things involved. There's one of my like brain moments. That's what in the weekly mini course, in the weekly mini lessons that you see, that's what I edit out, is when I just go, okay, need to think about the next thing I'm going to say. I edit out that thinking time. But you don't have the luxury of seeing my brain moments edited out. So in a nutshell, Kath, the vowel shape in your mouth changes between loud and soft. Also, the size of the embouchure hole varies between loud and soft. So the embouchure hole goes from big to small when you go loud to soft, and the vowel goes from open, so ah, up into ah for small. Now, there's a few layers to this. That's one layer, and then the layer on top of that is having control of your embouchure so that you actually have a clear sound all the time. And then on top of that is using the vowel shape in your mouth to get extra resonance in your sound. So there's a few things working in between, not in cahoots, in cohort. In cohort, there's a few things working together. We'll just say, for my lack of a fancy word. There's a few things working together, and to answer that question about airspeed, it's not your airspeed that controls dynamics, it's the things that I said. So hopefully that points you in the right direction. Now, Kath also has another question, which is how do you play notes that have staccatos as well as a slur over the top? Can you show us that in a piece? Yes, I can. So I've got this great piece, it's called Andante in C major by Mozart. You might even know this. I'm going to put a link below this video to the sheet music for this piece so that you can follow along. The piece goes like this, just to see if you know it. But it's not that bit that has the dots with the slurs. It is in bar, where is it? Oh, woof, I thought I hadn't printed out the right page. Bar 39. If you have a look on the link that I've added into bar 39, there are dots with a slur. This is called mezzo staccato. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how to play this. Basically, it means the notes are separated, not too short, and not slurred. They are separated and they are delicate. So I'm going to play from bar 37 and just listen to what happens when I get to bar 39 with those D mezzo staccato notes. So this is 37. Can you see those Ds were very separate? Now, if I play that section now and I do those Ds as staccatos, it would sound like this. Now, that is not very classical period, which Mozart is in, and it's not very just stylistic or musical. Now, if I played those Ds, I can't slur them because they're the same note, but if I played them really legato-tongued, it also wouldn't really sound that musical or correct for Mozart. Actually, I take that back. It sounds musical, but it's not accurate for Mozart. So you need them separated and lifted is the other word. Or, so there you go. That's what Mozart, that's what mezzo staccato is. It's lifted and separate. Not too short, not too long. Okay, next question. Leslie. Hi, Leslie. Leslie is also in the Flute Academy, and she asks, how do you play a tune off by heart? What is an example of a good tune to try and accomplish this with? Now, this is a great question because I didn't learn, when I was a kid, I started learning when I was 8. Some people, mostly violin and piano players at the moment, when I say at the moment, like this decade, this couple of decades, some kids learn the Suzuki method. And the Suzuki method is where you listen to the pieces that you're learning a bazillion times so that they get into your head, and then when you start to learn to play them on your instrument, you can learn Suzuki flute as well. But flute, piano and violin are the most common, and cello. When they get into your head, they're so much easier for you to then learn. Now, the reason I know this is because when I was 19 or 20, I changed flute teachers and I started learning with a flute teacher who actually was a Suzuki flute teacher, and she taught me this whole concept And I ended up doing Suzuki teacher training, and I became a Suzuki teacher for a few years as well. And I think it's fantastic. And I took a lot of those concepts of Suzuki and put them into my own method of teaching. And I'm really thankful for that experience of learning the Suzuki method, because it's just fantastic. Now, when I was 19 or 20, I started learning music from memory, and I'd never done this before in my life. So it was quite a foreign concept. So I understand where you're coming from, Leslie, being an adult and potentially never having memorized anything before. How do you do it? So there's two ways to go about learning something from memory. The first and most important part to this is make sure that you have the piece that you're trying to learn in your head. And that is by listening to or recording it, a good recording of it, dozens and dozens of times. You don't actually have to sit down and sort of focus on listening to it. You can put it on repeat, put it in your earphones, put it on your phone or Walkman. Remember the days of Walkmans? And while you're cooking dinner, while you're doing anything, while you're going for a walk, put it on repeat and just listen to it again and again and again and again. Just have it on in the background, in other words. This will seep into your brain, it will absorb into your brain, and then when you go to actually learn it from memory, you'll find it so much easier. So a little way of testing out if you know it well enough in your head is, can you sing it? So without the music playing, can you actually sing it? Sing the melody. If you can sing the melody start to finish, you're ready to go. You're ready to go at learning it from memory. You don't have to get to that stage for it to help. Every time you listen to it, it's going to help you. Now, the other approach to doing this, and this works in concert, I think that's the word I was trying to think of before, works together, is use patterns. So I've got an example for you. So this is Minuet. Until I printed this piece out to show you how to memorize this, Leslie, I thought this piece was by J.S. Bach. And I thought I had been mistaken, but then I looked it up. It turns out everyone thought it was by J.S. Bach until quite recently. Minuet, apparently, is by Christian Petzold. Never heard of him, but that is not Bach. It's a contemporary. Was a contemporary of Bach. So that's how Minuet goes. It's a piece for piano, but it works really well on the flute. So the way to go about memorizing this, once it's in your head, it's like an extra helping hand, is to use patterns. So I think about it starts on a G. So no, it doesn't. It starts on a D. It starts on a D, jumps down to a G, but my first pattern is that it goes back up to a D. So it goes D, da 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 da, D, da 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 da. I'm trying to say D, D, da 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 da, D. And the other pattern is that it jumps back down to a G. So D, G, da da da, D, G, G. So it's like the upper limit and the lower limit, Ds and Gs. It's like little signposts. And then the next bit, you'll just have to remember that it's an E. And then we've got Gs again. G, G, G. You can use this all the way through. I could take you through the whole piece and tell you the signposts, the landmarks, the upper limits, the lower limits, the patterns that I see all the way through this piece. But I want to keep moving with these questions because there's quite a lot of questions and I think that gives you enough to work with. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Inga is in the academy and she says, do you have a suggestion on how to quickly warm up? Many times I can't warm up properly when I play with her guitar group that she plays with, and my playing doesn't sound as clear as it should when I'm being called upon to play certain songs. Okay, so I'm just looking through my notes, Inga. Oh, okay, right. So you get faster at playing clearly quicker, so it takes you less time to warm up to a good sound. The more experienced you are as a flute player, like with the years that you've been playing, but also the more in practice you are at the time. So for most people, the break of being asleep at night and not playing, and playing first thing in the morning, they generally have a bit of a fluffy sound. And it takes 5-10 minutes or whatever to warm up. In that case, my best recommendation is to use the magic tone exercise that you've got access to in the Flute Academy. This is the most efficient and time-saving way of warming up at the start of a day to get your sound really clear. So use the magic tone exercise, and this is what I use to get my tone good as quickly as possible, because it's just intensive. So that's not the magic tone exercise, as you know, but I start to really focus on just my tone by doing this exercise, the one that you've got in the academy. Really, the best way to describe it is that it's intensive and it's intentional. It's intentional about your tone, your sound, and you can really focus on just that for the first 5 or 10 minutes of playing. So I'd suggest that you do that before you get together with your ensemble to play with, your guitar group. See if you can do that before you get there. And if you can't, just spend a moment in a back room where you rehearse and just play a few of those notes in the magic tone exercise. So see if that helps. Just think intensive and intentional, which is the magic tone exercise. Okay, next question. Elaine asks, when playing the flute, is it best to use a T sound with your tongue or a P sound with your embouchure? Now, that is such a good question. That's such a good question. I love it. So what she means is, should she be tonguing as ta or pa? So this is ta, and this is pa. Now you probably can't hear much of a difference. And that's because I've got my T sound to be quite clear and my P sound to be quite precise. P for precise. Oh, on my phone, my computer almost went on to sleep. If you saw the panic in my face, that's what that was. So Elaine, I can't remember if you're in the Flute Academy or not, but if you are, go to day 37, the advanced lesson. So scroll down to the bottom of the Flute Academy and you'll see under advanced, day 37. And this is how to vary your tonguing position. This lesson teaches you that your tonguing position actually varies depending on whether you're playing low, medium, or high. And it's like a graduation. Varying your tonguing to be more forward as you play higher gives you more precision with your tonguing when you're up high. Now, if you want to be super precise with your tonguing up high, P is the way to go. If I have to play in an orchestra and I have an exposed, particularly soft, up high entry, like that's to say a high E, and I have to come in softly and it's exposed so everyone can hear, I would start that with P. Like, I think I can do it clearer than that. Because P gives you absolute precision, especially up high. Some flute teachers teach you to start tonguing when you're a beginner with P, like this. Instead of T, like this. I teach T for a student, and some teachers teach P for a beginner student. They're both correct. So hopefully that just in a nutshell answers your question. They're both correct. The reason they're both correct is because as a beginner student who learns the T way of tonguing, as they get more advanced, they take their tonguing forward for more precision. So forward that sometimes it ends up as P, particularly for high. Now, students that learn as a beginner as P, it sounds a bit sort of rough to start with, like that. But as they get better at it and they get more precision, they learn to bring the tonguing back inside the mouth. And what actually happens is the students that learn T as a beginner, their tonguing moves forward to be more precise, and the students that learn P as a student, their their tonguing moves inside their mouth, and you both end up at the same position, which is quite forward tonguing inside your mouth, but with the ability to use p when you need, and the ability to be a little bit further back to when you need, which is more for lower notes. So, Elaine, that was a comprehensive answer. I hope that answers your question. Go and check out the advanced lesson on day 37 in the academy, if you're in the academy. And sorry, I just actually forget if you're in the academy or not, so apologies if you're not. Okay, the next question comes from Andrew. He said, I experience difficulty with tone production in rapid finger passages, for example, Bach's C major sonata, second movement, with all those semiquavers. By the way, if you're not British and you're not Australian, semiquavers are 16th notes. I'm not quite bilingual in those yet. 16th notes is what he's talking about. He said, I think it's body tension which is causing me problems, from shoulders to elbows, wrists and fingers, and the embouchure. Can you recommend a way to work on releasing this tension which will free up my playing and get everything flowing better? Such a good question. So, relaxation exercises well suited to flute players, ways of warming up with and without the flute, and ways of practicing extended rapid passages without tone production closing down as I go along. That's a big question, Andrew, and it's such a good question. Okay, let me see if I can get you on the right path with all of this. Below, you'll see a link to your piece that you just talked about, Bach's C major sonata, second movement. So this is the piece that Andrew is talking about, that he loses tone in the semiquaver passages. And so on. Okay, I've got answers for you, Andrew. Let's do this one at a time. Can I recommend a way to release tension which will free up your playing and get everything flowing better? Yes, I can. My biggest recommendation would be the Fast Fingers module in the Flute Academy. It goes through releasing tension from all different parts of your body, and it's called the Fast Fingers module because it speeds up your fingers, releasing tension. So that's one direction I could point you. To get you going on the right track is, I don't know why I needed to pull my hair back for you to see my shoulders, but anyway, now you can see my shoulders. Tight shoulders are often the culprit to slow, clunky fingers. And the problem with shoulder tension, and this is why I call it sneaky shoulder tension, is that you normally can't see shoulder tension. It's so slight. And this is why there's a whole module in the academy, is because it's a process, like it's a layered process of getting to the sneaky shoulder tension and releasing it. And then that relaxation flows down into your arms, or more to the point, the tension that is flowing into your arms and into your fingers, slowing down your fingers, that's released, and it releases your fingers. So my best suggestion for you is see if you can feel the tension in your shoulders when your flute is up like this, and then actually let it go. You don't need to push your shoulders down, just sort of let your arms float. And then try that in a passage. So it's a process. It's a process. You're not going to get an instant fix from this, but what you should feel instantly is an instant slight change in the way you feel like you're holding your flute. It should feel different. It should actually feel heavier, which I know is probably counterintuitive. It should feel heavier because if your shoulders are a little bit tense, which I reckon they are if your fingers are feeling a bit sort of clunky, if your shoulders are a little tiny bit tense that you can't even see and you let it go, your shoulders are no longer holding up your flute. They're no longer doing the work to hold up your flute, and your arms suddenly are taking on the weight of your flute. So your flute will actually feel heavier, and that's a good sign. It means that you're getting the tension out of your shoulders. Okay, so that's like a relaxation exercise with and without your flute, as in I should say not with and without your flute, but it's without playing like this, and then with playing. So that's the best exercise I can give you. Now, if you lose sound in those semiquaver passages in the Bach, yes, I definitely have a technique for you to practice this. If you slow down your playing, play this slowly and tongued. I want you to listen to your tonguing and listen to your sound. There's a very good chance that when you play it slowly, your tonguing is not clear. So, this is what I mean. If someone is playing it unclear, like that, and they slow it down, you'll probably hear that it's you can hear that the tonguing is not that precise and the tone is not that good. So your first step is to play it slowly and tongued with absolutely precise tonguing when it's slow. If you can't get it slower and clear with clear tonguing when it's slow, then remove your tongue and play each note without your tongue. It is only when you can do that that you will layer back on the tonguing and then the speed. It's only when you can play it with no tongue that you will actually be able to play it tongued and fast with precision. If you don't, you'll end up just having the... So it's like you get a magnifying glass and you just... That's like a screen magnifying glass. You magnify the piece so that it's slow, and then you magnify it even more so that there's no tongue. You clear that up with that exercise or that sort of method of practicing that I just mentioned. And then when you go back up to normal size, it's clearer. I hope that made sense. It's a really, really, really good way of clearing up fast passages that are sort of fluffy and not very well tongued. So there you go. All right, moving on to the next question. Margot says, is it more effective to play the flute? Oh, can't read very well. Is it more effective to play with your flute lower on your chin, or is it okay to play with your flute higher on your lip? Placement is really important. The reason placement of the lip plate on your mouth is so important is because it sets you up for directing the air at exactly the right spot, which is that opposite edge of the embouchure hole. When your air exactly hits on that opposite edge and half the air goes out and half the air goes in, which you obviously won't see, but that's physically, acoustically what happens, it sets you up for being able to get a clearer sound later on. Without that precision of direction, accurate direction, you won't ever get a clear sound or good control of your high notes and so on. So, look, my best direction is to direct you to the free Improve Your Tone course, mini course, which I suspect you've already done. But go and have a look at that that part in that mini course where I talk about rolling it out in the mirror and rolling it back in and having this edge of the embouchure hole on exactly the right part of your lip. Now, if you have a really big or bigger than usual bottom lip, you probably will need to put it up a little bit higher than where I say to place it. So yes, to answer your question, is it okay to play with your flute higher on your lip? If you have a particularly big lower lip, then yes. Yes, it is okay. Okay, cool. The next question from Candice or Candice maybe. In what cases would you use your thumb B flat, this fingering, or even the lever B flat? Oh my gosh, I so can't speak. Let me try that again. In what cases would you use thumb B flat fingering instead of long B flat or lever B flat? I've gotten too used to using the thumb B flat for every B flat I play that I'm having difficulties when there are accidentals for B natural. Oh boy, yes. This is such a good question. I actually made a YouTube video on this. I'll put a link to the video below. The video is called Which B Flat Fingering on the Flute is Correct, because there are 3, like you said. So it's really, you have a really good knowledge of B flats. Not everyone knows about the lever B flat, which is this one. The long B flat that Candace is talking about is this one. The lever one is this one. And then the thumb one is this one. I have a bit of a rule of thumb, and it's if there's a B flat in the key signature or there's predominantly B flats through the piece, I tend to use this one. And then the only time that you use the lever B flat, the long B flat or the lever B flat, is when a B flat is next to a B natural. The reason for that is you can control this between Bs and B flats so much more easily than trying to control this movement. You never really want to be sliding like this because you just don't have full control. Of course, when you switch in a piece, you switch it across to the B flat or back, but not while you're playing Bs to B flats, if that makes sense. Go check out that video because I go into way more depth, and that should help you. Okay, Sean has a question. He wanted to know about general flute maintenance, what you need to do. So my advice for flute maintenance is to make sure that you clean your flute after every time you play it. In actual fact, if you forget once, it's not going to do anything to your flute. But if you played your flute every day for a week and you didn't clean it every day for a week, you just left it, the moisture inside, your flute's going to start to smell. Whew, so you don't really want that. So clean your flute after every time you play it, just out of habit. Now the other bit of advice is get your flute serviced regularly. How often? So if you were a pro and you're playing for hours every day, you'd get it professionally serviced every year. It's quite expensive to get a good flute serviced, but if you're playing it every day and you're a pro, it's just part of your work costs. Now, if you're playing it, say, a few times a week, maybe less than an hour every day for a few times a week, you'd probably end up getting it serviced maybe every 2 years or 18 months to 2 years. So basically, the more you play it, the more you get it serviced. Having said that, I just thought of something else, Sean. It's really important to have a flute that is in good working order. Now, flutes go out of good working order when they're old or when they're really cheap. So really cheap flutes can work perfectly out of the box, and then within months they'll just need servicing so badly and so regularly that some flute repairers, instrument repairers, refuse to service cheap flutes, really cheap flutes, because you fix them and then a week later they'll need fixing again, and it's just not worth their time to be fixing flutes that just keep breaking. So hopefully that sort of answers your question a little bit as well for flute maintenance. Okay, Moss. Hi, Moss. She has a question. Is it common for flute players to get tennis elbow or tendonitis? I have it in my left arm and have been unable to play for weeks. I must be holding the flute incorrectly because I never play for longer than 1 hour. Could you show me the correct way to hold the left arm, please? That is such a good question, Moss, and I'm so sorry to hear that you have tendonitis. That must be painful and frustrating that you can't play. Look, it's not common, but it's common enough that I've heard of it. I know people that have got tendonitis. It's not always their left elbow, but it's a common, the reason it's called tennis elbow is because tennis is repetitive, doing the same movement. As you can tell, I'm not a tennis player from my tennis movement here. It's repetitive, doing the same movement. Flute is repetitive, doing the same movement. So typing is repetitive, same movement. So tendonitis is common in anything like this. So it's not specifically common for flute playing. It's common for anything where you're doing repetitive movements. If you have tension in your body, it makes these repetitive movements worse, harder on your body. So generally the reason people get tendonitis when they play the flute or do anything is because they have tension. And it's not necessarily, in fact, Moss, sorry, my camera just stopped recording. So what I was saying is that you, when you have tendonitis in your elbow, the tension is not coming from your elbow. It's not in your elbow. It's coming from elsewhere. Normally, it's further up. It can be from your hand going up, but often it's from up here coming down. So when you're holding your flute, make sure that you are turned a little bit to the right when you play so that you open up this space in your arms, in between your arms here. If you are playing facing forward like this and your left arm is squashed against your body, that's putting tension here, and that's going to send pain, discomfort, and potentially cause tendonitis down in your elbow as well. So just make sure that your left arm is not squashed against your body. It doesn't need to be like out or anything, just not squashed. And you do that by turning your body a little bit to the right when you play. That goes for sitting and standing. The other thing is make sure you use a music stand, because if you're looking down at music on a table, that puts the weight of the flute forward, and it's going to put strain on your neck. And everyone knows neck. that was a silly way of saying it. Neck tension. Necks are connected to shoulders, basically. Neck. Hang on, let me say that differently. Problems in your elbow can come from your shoulders, but further up is your neck. Neck strain will cause problems down here. And if you're looking down at music like this, it will send strain down your arm. The other thing is make sure that when you are playing, if you have a look at me on the side, make sure that your head is not pushing forward like that. Even a little bit. If you can feel yourself pushing forward, think of lifting up just a little so that the flute's coming to you and you're not pushing forward. The reason for that, neck strain, goes down your arm, causes all sorts of pain, and maybe in this situation one of those things have caused your tendonitis. On top of that, go see a really good physiotherapist or whoever you see for those kinds of things, because what I'm telling you, it will definitely help the pain if this is the cause, but I don't think it will completely fix it, because if you've got inflammation and an issue, you need someone with like physical, who can physically work on you to get rid of that. Good luck. I hope you sort it out, because like I said, it's painful and frustrating when you want to be playing the flute. Okay, moving on to Helle. Hella. I was just wondering today if sorry, I really should concentrate when I read. Let me try that again. Oh, Moss, I meant to say, you're not in the academy, are you? I don't think you are. There's a whole module on stability and posture in the academy, because it's so important. I mean, as you found out, it's so important to be aligned correctly. So there's a whole module in the academy. So if anyone is in the academy and they're having these sort of pain or discomfort issues, go check out that module. Hello. I was just wondering today if having a more expensive flute would make it easier to hit the third octave G, A, and up. She's talking about up there. I cannot get the third octave A at all. The G is as high as I can go. If you need an expensive flute, what price range would you suggest? Also, how is a professional flute more expensive? How is a professional flute? Oh my gosh. Sorry. Also, how is a more expensive professional flute better? Okay, there we go. Does it improve your sound quality if you know the technique of playing better? Okay, so that's a really good question. There's a few parts to that. Now, in order of importance, when people ask whether they need an expensive flute or not, the most important thing that you need to play the flute well is a flute that works. A flute in good working order. More expensive flutes stay in good working order for longer. Cheaper flutes can be fantastic working order straight out of the box, like I mentioned before, but then they can go out of whack pretty quickly and pretty badly. And then there's everything in between. So regardless of whether your flute cost $100 or $100,000, it needs to be in good working order. You can have a $100,000 flute that needs a service and doesn't work just as badly as a $100 flute doesn't work. Difference is you can fix the expensive flute and it will stay fixed for longer. Okay, so that's the most important thing. You need a flute in good working order. The second most important thing is your technique. So you need to learn the techniques, like what I teach in my business, how I talk about proper technique. This will go beyond any expensive flute. For example, if I had a $100 flute that's in working order, I could make that sound good. If you give me a $100,000 flute, I could make that sound as good as well. And you wouldn't hear 1,000 times difference. Like one costs 1,000 times as much as the other. And you wouldn't say it sounds 1,000 literally times better. So that's because I have good technique. Like I know how to play the flute. And anyone with good technique would have this happen as well. So the most important thing is to have a flute that works. And then the second most thing is to learn your technique. And then the least important thing is to spend money on a flute because you think it's going to improve your ability. So just be careful that you spend money in the right places. Get a good working flute. I don't recommend a $100 one because they just go out of whack straight away. Invest in yourself, like spend money with a teacher or with lessons online or real, because that's what is going to make you sound really good. Okay, there's more to this answer. The problem with a $100 flute is that you, as a non-pro, don't know if it's the flute that's a problem when it goes out of whack or if it's your technique. So that is the real problem with cheap flutes, is that the player doesn't know if the problem is the flute or them. So to answer your question about price range, my advice is to get a good, reputable brand new beginner flute. The reason I say brand new is because flutes go out of whack as they get older. Brand new, it's going to work. Good reputable brands like Jupiter, Yamaha, Pearl. There are more. There are more good brands, but that's just off the top of my head. They're the ones that I would recommend to students. A pro flute, like, doesn't a more expensive flute sound better? And do you need one? It's kind of like if you think about a car, if you think about a racing car driver who is a professional elite driver, to drive on just a normal street road, they don't need their, I'm just going to say Ferrari. I don't know if that's the right brand of a pro driver, but everyone knows what I mean by Ferrari. You don't need a Ferrari to drive successfully, accurately, safely around a normal suburban street. But you can't take that car onto a racetrack at an elite level and expect it to do the same thing as what the pro cars, like Ferraris, could do. So it's really only when you're getting up to an elite level that you want a flute quality to match that level. Being up at that elite level of flute playing, or even like a good student level, it gives you a piece of equipment that can do what you want it to do. You have better control. It does give you a better sound, but it gives you a better sound, but way more important than that is your embouchure technique, your ability. So that was kind of my comparison about I can make a cheap flute sound almost as good as a really, really, really expensive flute. So that's probably how I should have said it in the first place. Someone with good technique can make a cheap flute, like a beginner, brand new, Jupiter, Yamaha, Pearl, Gemeinhardt, sound almost as good as a really expensive flute. So funny story, actually. When I was doing a masterclass, and this is it was like 13 something years ago, it was in Austria. I played on a Muramatsu, which is the same brand as my flute, a Muramatsu, which was it was top of the range. The whole thing was gold. I think it had either titanium or platinum, I forget, and it was worth over 400,000 Australian dollars, which at the time was similar to US dollar. It was amazing. It was amazing, but it's not like 400 times a $1,000 flute. Like, it's really good, but what you hear come through in the flute player when a player plays a flute, it's the player more than the instrument. So that's another succinct way of saying it. It's more the player that you hear than the instrument. As long as the flute works, you hear the player, not the instrument. I could have said your answer in one sentence. It's the player that you hear more than the instrument, as long as the flute's working. Okay, so there you go. Hopefully that answered your question, even if it was a little bit round the going round. What? Circumlocucious. New favorite word. Not really new. I just like that word. Okay, Marissa has a question. She says, I have a problem with directing my airstream. I'm trying to learn to play the upper octaves more successfully, and I'm having trouble with getting the airflow going in the right direction, especially when coming from notes in the lower range. I'm doing the overtone exercise where you blow a low note and then move your lips jaw forward to redirect the airstream higher in order to get the next octave and overtones, rather than just pushing the air harder to achieve the overtones. Excuse me again. But I often end up moving my lips forward so much that I eventually direct the air up and over the instrument without getting any of the overtones during the whole process. I can't consistently get the overtones solely by moving my lips to redirect the air, which means I'm compensating by blowing harder to get the notes in the upper register. Okay, now this is awesome. And she says, is there something specific I can do, or do I just need to be patient and wait for it to get better with time? Thank you. Now, amazing question. This is more of an advanced question, but it's a fundamental part of playing the flute. So Marissa, there's something that you said that we need to clear up right away. I'll just do a demo for everyone about what you're talking about with your overtones. So I'm going to play low C, just for example, and I'm going to only change my embouchure and get the overtones that she's talking about, which are also called harmonics. So Marissa, you were talking about directing the air up. You don't direct the air up. If you, like you said, if you push your bottom jaw or bottom lip forward and direct the air up, you end up missing that opposite edge that is oh so important for getting the sound. So you're absolutely right that you've hit the nail on the head, is that if you blow too far up, you miss it. This is not how you do overtones. You do use your lips to go slightly more ooh for each harmonic as you go up, but it's not pushing your jaw forward. For two reasons. It doesn't work, as you've discovered. Pushing your jaw forward is not the right way to play higher. And also, our jaw is not designed to move forward and back like that. You'll end up giving yourself jaw pain, which is all good news because that's not how you do it anyway. Having said that, I've heard heaps of people say this. Heaps of teachers say this. So whoever told you is absolutely best intentions, and they've half got it right. You move your lips, both lips forward. What you actually want to do is bring your both lips will end up simultaneously getting closer to that opposite edge, not just your bottom lip. So I'm going to see if you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the side, but let's see if you can. So this is the right way to do it. Both lips, slightly more ooh for the harmonics. Now this is what you've been doing. I'm going to use just my bottom lip and I'll end up missing, the air will be directed too far up. It just doesn't work because you're missing the opposite edge with the airstream, and that's what actually makes the sound. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a really good question because it has such a specific answer, and it's a specific technique answer These are the sorts of things that I teach all through the academy, specific techniques like this, because I love that it's an instant change to someone's sound and ability on the flute. Just remember, when you're working on your harmonics, don't worry that you can't get everything. What I want you to think about for your progress is incremental improvement. So if you feel that you have better control over one harmonic up, better control than you had before, that is success for that day, even that week. So go one step at a time. It's the way that I teach, and it's the way that I teach in the academy, is to value each step of progress, because all of these steps that you make, these little improvements, they all accumulate, they all add up. And as long as you're going down the right path, so now you know the right technique for your mouth, as long as you're going down the right path, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and you'll keep getting better. So when you said, do I just need to be patient and wait? Yes and no. I get the feeling that you're already patient. I can just tell from the way that you wrote your question, I can tell that you're patient. So I don't think you need any reminder there. But what you needed is the right technique, which you know now. Okay, next question. Frank, what is the best way to maintain intonation when going across all three registers, low, middle, and high? Especially when you're jumping registers, like for example, low to high. Okay, so maintaining intonation across low, middle, high. Generally on the flute, low is usually flat. High is usually sharp. Now, there's two parts to this answer for you, Frank. The best way to improve your intonation is to improve your tone, because they are completely linked. For example, I'm going to play a chromatic scale and I'm going to go past C sharp, this C sharp. And you'll hear that if I play it with a bad tone, it's also sharp. Oh, hang on, bad. Hear how sharp that is? Now if I play that with a good tone, it's nowhere near as sharp. Nowhere near as sharp. So that's your step one, is to improve your tone, because it is linked to your intonation. Okay, and then on top of that, so your step two to the process is to work out the exceptions, or to become aware of the exceptions. So one exception is C sharp, is that it tends to be sharp. Even with good tone, it still has a tendency to be sharp, so you've got to get an even better tone to make it less sharp. Another exception is high D, which is flat. But something that I learned, I remember talking to a flute repairer about this. He said high D is actually not flat, even though everyone thinks it is. It's that everything else around it is sharp, because high tends to be sharp. It's more like a bit of fun trivia, because in actual fact, practically speaking, the D is flat. My teacher that I learnt with, as a more advanced adult flute student, he was French, and every time I played a D, he would say beaucoup d'énergie. That note needs lots of energy. And what he's talking about is it's naturally a dull, dead, flat note. So when you learn these exceptions, you can do something about it. So I use the magic tone exercise for evening out my tone and my intonation. The magic tone exercise, this is what I teach the academy students. It's a 7-day module, so I can't cover all that here. But the magic tone exercise is my go-to exercise for evening out tone, which evens out my intonation. And then on top of that, become aware of the exceptions. Okay, so there you go. Next question is from Sue. How do you consistently achieve a low C? So low C is that note. In one word, actually 3 words, Sue, relax your embouchure. That's how you get low C to come out. If you don't have a relaxed embouchure, your low notes, particularly low C, you'll either get no sound like this. Hang on. Like that if you're too tight. Or you'll get higher notes. Like that if you're too tight. So that's what happens if you're too tight. So you need to relax as a starting point. Excuse me. Oh yeah. I did. So this is such a common issue, Sue, for people, that I did one of the weekly mini lessons, the free ones I did on, it's called Why You Can't Play Low C on the Flute. I'll put a link to that video below this video so that you can go and have a look, because I go into a whole lot more detail about it. Look, relaxing your embouchure and relaxing your face is such a big part of playing the flute. It's really important. It affects more than just low C. It means that you can get your high notes easier. It means that you have a better sound and you can control everything a lot better. You can control the jumping around. Frank, I didn't answer part of your question. He was talking about especially jumping from low to high. And Sue, this answers your question as well, or extends your question. A relaxed embouchure, Frank and Sue, means that you have the flexibility of embouchure to be able to control going from low to high. So for example, that's an octave, and it's really smooth. But now I'm going to jump 2 octaves, and it's going to be smooth because I have the relaxedness in my face to give myself the flexibility in my lips to be able to jump up like that. That wasn't that smooth. I can do better. There we go, that got better. So that's how you achieve those kinds of jumps. For anyone who's in the academy, I take you through you'll notice that the thread of relaxation goes all the way through the academy because it's just such a fundamental part of playing the flute well. Okay, Phil asks, here's one thing I find tricky, if not nearly impossible to do quickly and precisely. That is descending an octave from the second D to the first. And he uses, I love, Phil, that you use real note names. He says going from D6 to D5, which is this. He finds this tricky. There has to be a way to do this, D to D in a piece such as a jig, without completely fudging the second D. Going uphill seems much easier. Now, you're not alone, Phil. There is a reason for this. So this is what Phil's talking about, going from this D down an octave. He's finding that it goes, that's what I think you mean, Phil. Is it just doesn't happen so quickly. Now, the answer to this is 1, learn the real way of playing high notes, and 2, learn how to do that in reverse. For the first point, the free mini course at www.flute.school/high notes. Actually, just remembered, I'm not editing this video, so I'm not going to put that up on the screen. Excuse me. I'll put a link below. www.flute.school/high notes. Free mini course. If you haven't already, do that, because it starts you on the right path to learning the real way to play high notes. In the academy, there's a lesson on day 5 called The Reverse Control of High Notes, and it teaches you the real way of playing high notes in reverse, which is exactly what you need. I can demonstrate it. You can see my mouth is moving. To learn how to do it, go and do that free mini course. And then try and do it in reverse for jumping down. So I hope that that will get you on the right path. Next question is from Marie or Mari. How do I learn how to roll my R's for flutter tonguing? Can you help me devise a way to roll them. Yes, I can. So good. I made a video on this. It's called How to Flutter Tongue on the Flute. I'll put a link below for you. Now, there's two ways to flutter tongue. And it's just preference. One isn't better than the other. It's just what you prefer. One is to growl, which I can't really do. Back here in your throat. That was the worst demonstration I've ever done in my life, which is why I don't use that method for flutter tonguing. You don't need to be good at both. You only need to be good at one. I use the one that is rolling your tongue, which is the one you were asking about. So as you can tell, I can do that perfectly fine. That's flutter tonguing. You can learn to do it. Try and it's the R. It is the start of r is in the language of Spanish, where they go ara, ara. There's like a flap of their R. That's the start of being able to go r. And the way that if you don't know how to do that, unless you're Spanish, you might not. Use a word in English that has a double T. Let's say butter. And say butter. And then make that middle D light. Light and flappy, like butter, 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 ra, 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 ra. And try and get your tongue so it's just like lightly tapping the top of your mouth. And then try and extend that. And you'll end up sort of getting a double, and then a triple, and then you end up with longer. And then your next step is to put that onto the flute. Go check out the video on how to flutter tongue on the flute, and it tells you a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. Okay, Jasmine says, how do I play with a less airy sound? Woof, 100%. Do I have the answer for you, Jasmine? Do the free mini course, www.flute.school/free. It shows you exactly how to play with a less airy sound. Students that are in the academy, they learn how to do the magic tone exercise, which extends the technique of playing with a clearer, stronger sound, and they learn how to play with a resonant sound. So there you go. Go do the free course, and that will get you on the right track. Okay, the next question is from Kate. I figured out that if I use the vowel sounds to change where my tongue and soft palate are in the back of my mouth, it really is almost all I need to do to make a diminuendo or a crescendo with almost no change in tone color or pitch. I love your question already, Kate. I also changed this for getting the second and third octaves and tone colors. All my life I was taught just to use my embouchure, so I was just wondering if this is actually a correct way of doing things for dynamics. I'm actually thinking this must be a lot of the breath support that teachers talk about. It seems to work so much better. My aperture does change a little, but in a very relaxed way. Kate, you are 100% right. 100% right. Now there's a couple of layers to this. So yes, you use your vowel sounds for dynamics. So here's an example. I'm going to play a note and I'm going to play a note, so I'll play A. Forte. Everything is open in my mouth. The hole is open more, everything is open. Now I do that piano, and everything is more closed. The hole in my mouth. To answer your question about breath support, I think of breath support as airstream support. Well, no, maybe that's not the right way to say it. Breath support, when people talk about it, it really is about airstream support. And part of airstream support is embouchure and mouth. It's embouchure, it's your mouth, it's a relaxed body, and it's effective breathing. So breath support is more than just about breathing. It's airstream support. So you are totally on the right path. There's something else. Oh, embouchure. So yes, your embouchure, when you said your embouchure moves, but it's in a very relaxed way, it sounds like you have very good flute technique, and I love your question. Your embouchure does move for louder and softer notes, because for softer, it's smaller. And louder is bigger, obviously. Okay, really, really good question. Okay, Jane asks, firstly, good name. Does wearing lipstick affect playing the flute? I would love to know your opinion on this, as I observed some women doing this and even done it myself. Really short answer for you. I don't wear lipstick. I don't know why. My flute playing friends do wear lipstick, and you see it. They wear it and they have it on their lip plate when they are not playing. So you can totally do it. I guess the short answer is I don't know if it affects flute playing. It mustn't do, because I know good players who use lipstick. So suit yourself. Genevieve says, can playing flute regularly expand... Oh, let me try that again. Can playing flute regularly expand my breathing capacity, or do I need to do certain exercises to expand it? Lung capacity or breath capacity is less about lung size and expanding your lung size, and more about how you use your air. Like I said to Kate a moment ago, breath support is about airstream support, and that is involved in learning the proper way of breathing. Now, there's a whole module in the academy about breathing, because people often think that they need to expand their lungs to play with more air, and that's the last thing you need to do. When I say the last thing, I don't mean it's not a good thing. I just mean it's literally the last thing. There's so many things you do before getting to that stage, like learning how to use your embouchure correctly for airstream support. And it makes you feel like you've got bigger lungs. So basically, if you go through this process, one, you learn to use your embouchure correctly by improving your tone. That will make you feel like you've got more air. It will make you feel like your lungs are bigger. And then, oh, come on, computer, don't turn off. Okay, cool. And then the next step is to remove tension from your body so that it gives your lungs space to be bigger. So you're not actually improving your lung capacity, you're just being more effective with the lungs that you've got. And then the next stage after that is to actually learn to breathe bigger, like actually learn to breathe bigger and more efficiently. Not efficiently, effectively. Learn to breathe bigger. That's probably a good way to put it. So no, you don't need to do lung exercises. You don't need to do exercises to improve your breathing capacity. You need to improve your tone, because tone means that good tone means that you're using your air more efficiently, and you'll have more. It will feel like you've got a lot more air in your lungs to use. I'd suggest go and do the free course if you haven't, the How to Instantly Improve Your Tone, www.flute.school/free. Gee, I can say that fast now. That's definitely your first step. Yosi says, I had a serious accident and 2 of the ligaments in my right arm were severed. Basically, it's hard for me to hold up the flute. I prop up my arm with a post, which I put just below my elbow. It's far from perfect, but at least I can play. Do you have any ideas how I could better support my arm? Yes, I do. Now, when you said you've propped up your arm with a post, I'm assuming that the post is on the floor. I would suggest see if you can prop up your right arm with something that attaches to your body. And the reason for that is it means that you'll have your body as the central part of taking the weight of the flute. Everything will come back to your body and you'll be able to stay aligned. It's like a prop against your body that will sort of replace your arm muscle that you can't use because of the severed, did you say severed ligaments? And gosh, I can't imagine how painful that must be or have been. If you prop it up attached to your body, it means that you'll have exactly the same alignment as someone without that post. If you have that propped up on the floor, it sort of shifts your center maybe not center of balance, but it shifts the weight that's being taken by the flute to not just your body, but something external, which means that you're going to be offset. So hopefully that answers your question. Good luck. And I love how resourceful you are, that you've still managed to keep playing the flute despite having an arm injury. I think that's excellent. So good on you. Okay, the next question. We've got 3 questions to go. Rob. Hi, Rob. He says, how do you stop your flute from rolling off when playing C or C sharp? I'm having balance issues with the flute. That's a great question. So I'll show you what Rob means. He's saying that when he plays, hang on, I'll just move over so you can see. He says when he plays C, I'll use C sharp as an example because there's less fingers on the flute. He's saying that the flute rolls, probably in, I'm guessing in like that roll, Rob, roll. If your flute is rolling in, which is the most common situation, it's because your flute keys are turned when you play. So this is level. I don't know what it looks like on the camera, but that's exactly level with the floor. Yours, if your flute's rolling in for C sharp and C, are turned too far in towards you when you play. There's more weight on the inside part of your flute because of these rods. So if you have it level or turned in towards you, it's going to want to roll even more when you take your fingers off for C and C sharp. You really want to have these keys tipped slightly forward to offset that weight that's on the back of the flute. That will solve all your problems with a rolling flute. Okay. Oh, by the way, Rob, you're not in the academy, are you? I don't think you are. But if anyone is, check out, and they have this problem, check out day 9. The exercise is called the natural balance of the flute. So Rob, your question is so good that I did a whole day's exercise, not a whole day, a whole exercise on one of the days in the academy, because I totally agree with you that it's something that is so important to playing the flute, because every time you play a C or a C sharp, if your flute's rolling, your hands are going to be gripping to hang on to the flute, and that slows down your fingers. So by the way, Rob, if you have a problem with sort of slow or clunky fingers, that's why. It's because your flute is not balanced. The natural balance of the flute is not in place yet. Okay, Gwyn says, what is the point of tonguing and how do you do it? I love your question, Gwyn. I've got a nice little example for you here. Just hang on one second. Okay. Tonguing articulates and defines. For example, I'm going to play you a little extract from the Nutcracker Suite. This is the Dance of the Mirlitons. I'll put a link below this so you can follow along if you want. So it goes like this. So cute. I love the Nutcracker. Tchaikovsky just writes for flutes and wind instruments so well. So well. It is such a joy to play. If you ever get to play Tchaikovsky in an ensemble, especially an orchestra, it's the best. That is just so perfect for the flute, that writing. Anyway, get off my Tchaikovsky fan club soapbox. The point of tonguing. So if I did that same thing and I didn't tongue anything and I slurred it, it would have a totally different effect. It would sound like this. And if I did it separated notes, which is what I think you're talking about, separated notes, but I'm not going to tongue them. I'm just going to use my breath to define the note. It will sound nowhere near as clear and precise and sparkly, like this. So you can compare that to... Oh, that was not a good example. Sounds so much more sparkly and just articulated. So the way you do it is ta. You say ta, 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 ta. Feel where the tip of your tongue touches the inside of the top of your mouth. Ta, ta, ta. And that's the position that you want to be tonguing in for the flute. If you go from ta, 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 you can do this in a few steps. Then whisper, ta, ta, ta. Then blow that with a flute-shaped mouth. Keep it in the same spot as you do for ta. And then put that onto the flute. That's how you learn to tongue. Okay, the last question is from Emma, or Ema. How do I play the most amazing high notes with no extra air sound? Your question is in two parts, or I should say it's like you've got two questions in one. The no extra air sound. So you can fix this on your whole range of the flute, not just the high notes. So you improve your tone, and you do that by improving your embouchure. And you do that by going and doing the free course, www.flute.school/free. I'll put a link below for you. It's 3 days, improves your tone, improves your embouchure. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, amazing, how do you play my amazing high notes? You do this by learning the proper way of playing high notes. And you can do this by doing the free course, www.flute.school/high notes. I'll put a link below as well that teaches you the proper way to play high notes. Now, this is really important, Emma. You need to do these 2 mini courses, or I should say these 2 parts to improving your flute playing, in that order. Improve your tone first, and then improve your high notes. If you try and improve your high notes before improving your tone, you'll end up with easier high notes, but with a fluffy sound. So that might be the situation that you're in at the moment. You can play high notes, but you have a fluffy sound. Go and improve your tone first, and then learn the proper way to play high notes. So there we go. They are all the questions. I got through everything. So remember, we've got a Q&A like this every month. So you can ask any questions you want. If you want to find out more about the Academy, go to www.flute. I got ahead of myself. www.flute.school/academy. You can go and see what you'll learn in the Academy there. I've just opened up for the December enrollments. We're in year 2020, if anyone's watching back on this video. I've just opened up for December enrollments, and we're going to have 5 personal video reviews of your playing available as bonuses for this month. That amount changes each month depending on how much time I've got. This month I've got time to do 5. So if you get in first 5 people into the full pay of the Academy, you get a bonus review of your flute playing. So more details on that webpage. Otherwise, I'm going to see you next week for the weekly mini lesson. And I'll see you next month for the January Q&A. So have a great Christmas. Basically, gosh, can you believe it? December. Thanks for joining me in this Q&A. It's the very first one, and I'm glad to have had you on board for the whole thing. See you later.